Hi, this is Kiara, and we're going to talk about how there is a spiritual battle first, and then a physical manifestation of a battle or event then takes place. So we live in a world where it's created by Elohim, the Creator, and we are made out of things that are invisible. We are made out of matter and atoms. So this proves or hints to the mind, even if one isn't an unbeliever, there is a spiritual realm. And we are going to start in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 14 and ending in 19. So it says here, "Therefore the king of Syria sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, 'Alas, my master, what shall we do?' So he answered, Elisha answered his servant, 'Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them.' And Elisha prayed and said, 'Jehovah, I pray, open his eyes that he may see.' Then Jehovah opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountains was full of horses, chariots of fire, all around Elisha. So Jehovah opened the young servant's spiritual eyes." And if we go to 2 Corinthians 10 and 4, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God Elohim to the pulling down of strongholds." In Ephesians chapter 6, starting verse 10, it says here, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood." Our battle isn't in the physical realm, not really, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, Jehovah, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. So Paul the apostle stresses here, that our true battle as Christians, as sons and daughters of God, is really in the spiritual realm. And even in the world, the events of the world, before really a major battle or war is fought, behind the scenes is a spiritual battle in the realms. And this is why in 2 Corinthians it says, "For our weapons of our warfare are not carnal," it's not physical, it's in the spirit, "but by mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds." And one of them is prayer, intercession. And prayer can shape, even change the nature, the course of history and the battle of men, because really it's in the hands of Jehovah. He is in the throne. He reigns forever. And through the prayers is so powerful with a believer. So we must pray, because it's one of our weapons of warfare. So if we go now to 1 Samuel chapter 17, it is the famous battle between David, young David, and Goliath, the giant. And I wanted to really zoom in, starting in 1 Samuel chapter 17:45. "Then David said to the Philistine, 'You have come to me with a sword, with a spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of Jehovah, the God of armies of Israel, whom you defiled. This is the day that Jehovah will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God, there is an Elohim in Israel. Then all the assembly shall know that Jehovah does not save with a sword and a spear, for the battle is Jehovah's, and he will give you into our hands." I want to stress here that the word that they use. And it is, and David uses, I will give you the carcasses of the camp of Philistines, to the birds of the air. And it says here, then all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. So before that, Goliath was cursing David, and the Philistine cursed David by his gods. So he evoked the power of his gods, small g. And he says to David, I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. And Goliath essentially evokes the false gods. But behind these are really demonic and principalities, demonic agents of war behind Goliath and the Philistine army against Jehovah and his army, which is the angelic hosts that protects and fights for Israel. And I can guarantee you that Michael was in Archangel Michael was there, because his main goal, his main function is war, and particularly protecting Israel. And so the word for hosts that is used by David, not the Lord of hosts, but the host means machanem, the encampment. I will give you to the host of the birds of the air. And encampment is the angels or the soldiers. The word for Hebrew word is machanem, which is encampment, or angels surrounding the camp or the battle. And then David said, I will give you to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth. And the word for air is shamayim, which means the sky or the higher celestial bodies. So really, this invokes that there isn't just a physical encampment between the Philistines and David and the army of Saul, but they're behind it, in a greater spiritual battle is really a spiritual battle between the powers of air. Again, when Paul was saying it's the principalities, the powers, the rulers of darkness, the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And in this case, it's the ones fighting against Israel, the army behind Goliath. It's their host. He invoked his gods. And it's really these fallen angels, these fallen principalities, that behind it is rebellion against God. The principalities, the powers, the rulers of darkness, specifically of the Philistines, specifically in that territorial area against Israel. So now we see that now in a certain country around Israel, where there is much war, much fighting going on. And someone, I think there was a title I said, it's a religious war, but behind it, it's always been a spiritual war, a spiritual conflict. In the ancient days, it started. And so this is where it's coming from. So as Christians, as believers, we also have our own war, and it's fought really in the spiritual realm. And so Jehovah encourages us in his word to, one, use your weapons. And they are not carnal, they're not physical weapons, they're not swords or guns, but they're spiritual. And one of them is prayer, intercessory. God's house is a house of prayer. And another one is to put on the full armor of God. And we stand firm because Jehovah fights our battles and gives us a victory. For we are more than conquerors through him who loves us. And I thank Jehovah, and may he give us victories to the glory and honor of his name forever and ever. And may he bless Israel, and may Israel be victorious.